Well, okay, good morning. This is our 44th session of Wandering Through the Big Book. And where's my, there you are. This is January the 9th, and this morning we're talking about step 7. So we're going to begin with our opening words. We got some readers ready to go. And here we go. Welcome to this session of Wandering Through the Big Book. This is not a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. There's no group conscience, no seventh tradition, no requirement for membership. Anyone is welcome. Our primary purpose is taking an in-depth look at the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in order to deepen and strengthen our own recovery and to try to help others to do the same and try to become trusted servants of our fellowship. We are seeking conscious contact by trusting God, cleaning house, and helping others. And we are trying to improve that conscious contact by practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 every day and applying the spiritual principles we are learning to the details of our ordinary day-to-day lives. We will begin this gathering with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here. And then Robin, if you would start with number 1.
I will. Good morning, Robin, alcoholic. Number 1, I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
And Lauren, number 2.
No attitude of holier than thou, no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. Page 18, and be quick to see where religious people are right. Page 87.
And Buck, number 3.
If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but 2 alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out of your consciousness how miserable you really are, page 25. And the other, to ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, page 83.
Thank you, Buck. And Amy, number 4.
Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will, page 85.
Thanks, Amy. And finally, John, number 5.
Just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of human calamity, page 68. Head in the clouds and feet firmly on the ground, page 130.
Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm gonna mute you all and then proceed to the short lecture to be endured. Okay. Well, good morning again, and nice to see everybody. And I can't tell you, Buck and I were discussing recording this thing, and I was trying to learn how to do it myself, but I would have to be on speaker view in order for it to work out right. And I don't think I could do it on, I hate looking at myself. And I love seeing your faces, even though your little teeny faces on here, but it means a lot to me to see your faces, particularly when they smile. But okay, just for a moment, I want to go back to reading number 4 because you know, I'm all into St. Ignatius and also this woman, Evelyn Underhill, and just recognizing, you know, we come at this spiritual stuff out of desperation. You know, we don't come willingly, lovingly, like, oh, I can't wait to pray. all this God stuff, we come at it because because number 3 says, well, you only have 2 choices here. Go on, keep doing what you're doing. Try to deny how miserable and rotten your life really feels, or try to get a relationship with God. It's like, and the book several times says these are not easy alternatives to face right at the beginning of We Agnostics, to be doomed to an alcoholic death, or to live on a spiritual basis. These are not easy alternatives to choose between. And alcoholics are going to go, can we go over the alcoholic death again? Can you remind me of what's going to happen if I keep on drinking? Because I'm not sure I want to pursue a relationship with God. But number 4, this is as high a bar as I have ever seen. That what number 4 is saying here is the proper use of your human will is to try to be asking the question all frickin' day long, how can I best serve thee? That's what we're supposed to be doing with our minds. I don't know about you. I think about it occasionally. I really love step 10 and really love, in a brief time, in a page and a half, how much advice it gives. It tells us how to handle our own negativity, and incorporates all the steps right there in that first paragraph on page 84. When selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear, when they show up, boom, pray at once for removal. Step 6 and 7. Share with somebody. Step 5. Make amends if called for. Steps 8 and 9. And then turn your mind to service. Boom, 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 boom. And if I will do that, what number 5 says of these readings is I will experience serenity right in the face of the calamity. It's just, for me, it's the most awesome promise in the book, that it doesn't say the calamity is going to stop, doesn't say rainbows and unicorns. It says I will be able to experience my human life with a sense of patience and tolerance and kindness and love, rather than restless, irritable, and discontent, rather than resentment, fear, and remorse. Because that's where we start out. Those are the bedevilments. We come in here having trouble with personal relationships, prey to misery and depression, can't make a living that's satisfying, full of fear, unhappy, all that stuff on page 52. And then we go to work. And most of the time we don't even, I know for me, I didn't do the 3rd step prayer with any sense of, oh boy, oh wow, I'm going to get to have a relationship with God. It's I'm doing it because I don't want to drink again. And because you kept saying, if I don't do this stuff, I will drink again. You promised me. It's a negative promise. Don't do this stuff. You're going back. You're going back to the hideous 4 horsemen: terror, bewilderment, frustration, despair. That's what number 3 is saying. You only get these 2 choices: the 4 horsemen, restless, irritable, discontent, resentment, fear, and remorse, or seeking a relationship with God, which is going to take a long time, by the way, and you're going to have to practice. You're going to have to endure the frustration of not feeling anything happening. Okay, I'm off the soapbox. Here we go into step 7, and I hope y'all have printed out some of that, although you don't have to. I'm going to do, well, we'll see. Okay, so so just at the start here, I love breaking this thing down to little formulas, and one of those comes from step 11, and it's pause, ask, listen, do. And that if I will pause and I will ask and I'm able to listen, and then I'm able to act in accordance with the guidance that I get, I will experience serenity in the face of the calamity. And another way that it's said is in the material right before the third step prayer. It says, first of all, we have to quit playing God. Now that's way back in the third step. And frankly, I don't even, when it says that, I don't even understand that I am playing God. And I surely don't understand, wait a minute, we're about to talk about resentment and fear and remorse around our selfish conduct. Are you telling me that that's the way I play God? That those are my old ideas that I've got to get rid of? Yeah. And how are we going to get rid of them? Well, by the combination of 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9. And we got to do all that stuff, because if we don't, we might be able to pause and we might be able to ask. But frankly, we can't listen. We can't hear, because our minds are consumed with resentment and fear and remorse. There's no room. There's no room in the inn. There's no room to receive anything. And I tell you, as hard as I try to work at this thing, you know, and I take it seriously. Step 11 says, on awakening, I'm to ask God to direct my thinking, and especially ask that my thinking be divorced from self-pity, self-delusion, self-seeking. You know, I am looking forward to the day when I can do that, and I'll feel it. I do feel it. I feel it in nudges, and I feel it, but I feel it most with red light, green light, where instead of feeling God direct my thinking, I go, well, here's what I'm thinking, you know, here's what I want to say to so-and-so to set him straight and get him more on this spiritual path. You know, it's just such a joke to me today that I actually believe my mind thinks resentment is a good idea, that I can change somebody else's behavior for the better by sending them this ill will, you know. Under the specious theory that when they sense my displeasure with them, they're gonna examine what they're doing that might cause that displeasure, and then they're going to change because they don't want to experience my resentment. If they know what's good for them, you know, but it's just amazing. Same way I feel about impatience, that my mind is telling me, here's how to speed things up. Get impatient, honk the horn, flip somebody off, start shouting at the TV set. This will make things better. And yet we get this standard, please show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, love. And we got to be shown the way because we can't get there. I can't get there on my own. So at any rate, the formula is quit playing God. And then next is invite God in. And then next is do as directed. That's a long version of quit playing God would be pause. Just stop it. Quit playing God. Invite God in. That's the ask and listen part. And then do as directed. It's one of the third step promises, that if I will do as my new employer asks me to do, I will be given everything I need. That's the promise. So, and then for me, and the tie-in to today is that I'm hoping we're going to talk about Emmet Fox's the book in Sermon on the Mount, where he talks about Jesus's beatitudes, and one of those, the next to the last, is about peacemakers, and so he says some wonderful things, and I hope to read to you from the book Sermon on the Mount what he says, because what he's essentially is saying is, if you really want a relationship with God, you've got to get to a state of serenity before you're going to be able to get much out of that relationship. But that's interesting, you know, that is a foundation for a relationship with whatever you call it, with God. And he defines serenity as the deep peace of the soul's natural state. And I contend, for me, my body and mind's natural human state is restless, irritable, discontent, resentful, frightened, and remorseful. That's my natural human state. And we get to step 6 and 7 after cataloging that state of mind in 4 and 5 and disclosing it in 5. Now we're getting to 6 and 7, which is serious prayer for removal and serious asking for redirection. And my experience is, I did not see this at the time, but I think that sense of redirection is making amends. That the way that if I'm really interested in having my defects of character removed, so that I can experience patience, kindness, tolerance, and love, I have to go through the amend process, which is where we really change, and which is where we are promised conscious contact before we are halfway through amends. If you take the 9th step promises as indicators of conscious contact, where the intuition is operating more predominantly than the intellect. So I'm trying to say pause, ask, listen, do. That this is not only steps 4 and 5, which you could say is the pause. 6 and 7 are the ask and listen. And 8 and 9 are the doing. And you also say step 10 is the pause. And step 11 is the asking and listening. And step 12 is the doing. You can also say quit playing God is the pause. Inviting God in is the asking and listening. And doing as directed is the do. It may or may not be helpful for you, but it's tremendously helpful for me. And the other part is, because we're promised serenity, then the question becomes, well, if I'm not experiencing serenity, what am I not doing? And if you just stick with pause, ask, listen, do equals serenity, if I'm not experiencing serenity, then what am I not doing? If you go back to that promise, if I humbly rely on God, that's the pausing and asking and listening, and then do as God directs me to do, I am promised serenity in the face of the calamity. So if I'm not experiencing serenity, what am I not doing? Am I not pausing? Am I not asking? Am I not listening? Am I not doing? Where is where's my shortcoming? Okay. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this more when we get to amends, because it is such a powerful part of our thing. So I'm gonna look at the study guide stuff, whether or not you've got it printed. And I better put these in the order that they are. Okay. So I just want to point out on step 7, 10 pages, page 1, this opening section is just talking about page 76. You know, we just get one paragraph on step 7. Step 6 was about learning the necessity and the effectiveness of praying for willingness. And 7 is the actual prayer for removal. And the prayer for removal is a model that we're given throughout the whole book. And I just note that it starts in the 3rd step. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. I have to be relieved of the bondage of self, which is my old ideas, my old habit patterns, my old way of living, in order that I can even hear and effectively do thy will. And then remember, we've talked a lot about the avoidance and the attraction in resentment, fear, and sex conduct. We avoid retaliation or argument, and we seek a kindly and tolerant view of each and every one, no exceptions. No exceptions. Please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be. It says later on, we don't apologize for God. And that's a great question. In what way do I apologize for God? And my answer is any whining and complaining about anything. And one of the ways I whine and complain is worry. You see these well-grooved lines up here? I mean, I've been working a lifetime on these things, and they won't go away. And this is me apologizing for God by worrying about everything. The state of the world, everything. And I hope before I die I'm not going to get rid of them, but I hope they get softer. So, and then finally in the sex conduct, and I don't know if any of you have looked at this. I don't know that we'll get to it today, but I did these 12 commandments. You know, we can't have 10, we got to have 12, obviously, but and it's later on in this thing, but you know, thou shalt not apologize for God. You know, it's just saying things in a firmer way. Thou shalt not be the arbiter of anybody else's sex conduct. You know, thou shalt not judge, period. That's what it says. And then the alternative is ask God to mold my ideals and help me live up to them. That's the ask, listen, and do part of it. Okay, so back on just the major form of the prayer for removal is, please take away this and direct me toward that. And a lot of sponsors, when they get to step 7, will ask the sponsee to, on the left-hand column, write down the character defects. Mine were selfish, arrogant, impatient, afraid, judgmental. You know, they're all going to be some version of impatient, intolerant, unkind, and frightened, the opposite of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love. Mine were selfish, arrogant, impatient, afraid, judgmental. And then on the right side of the page, you write the opposite of those things, which are going to be patient, tolerant, kind, and loving. And then the sponsor tries to make the point to the person doing the work, you can't get from here to there. You can't get there from here. You lack of power is your dilemma. You know, you can wish to be patient, tolerant, kind, and loving, and you can't do it because of your old ideas and the habit patterns of the mind. You've got to actively pray for removal and ask for redirection, and then do as you're directed to do. And if you can do that, I'm saying you, but I mean me or us, you'll get to experience serenity, the deep peace of your soul, right in the middle of whatever calamity you're enduring. That's why I love how we read that: head in the clouds, feet on the ground. Head in the clouds is serenity, feet on the ground is the calamity, and dealing with it. So at any rate, this first page is talking about the prayer for removal. And one of the prayers down toward the bottom is the set-aside prayer. Well, the set-aside prayer is a really gentle, you know, it's not remove, you know, like cut it out of me. It's like, well, could you please just set it aside? just set aside my old ideas. Just move them over a notch in my attention so that I can ask and listen and do. In its basic form, this came from Don Pritz in Denver, Colorado, and the whole, you know, theme of big book sponsorship that shows up so much in the stuff that we talk about. God, please set aside everything I think I know about, and then you fill in the blank. We have a little meeting here in the Camden area that it's please set aside everything I think I know. Now I'm blanking on what it, but it says the 12 steps, you know, my recovery, everything I think I know about life. Please set aside everything I think I know so that I can be open to a new experience of you and of your truth. I think that's what it says. It's a powerful prayer, and it's amazing what can happen when I can remember it. You know, it's really interesting at this stuff on Saint Ignatius and thinking about our steps, because we're trying to I really am starting to be with, so we have this mental faculty of memory. You know, we can remember what's happened. And we also have this mental faculty of imagination. And a lot of what St. Ignatius does in these spiritual exercises is using your imagination to imagine that you went through what Jesus went through, and see what effect that has on your ability to be compassionate and other good things, to be patient, tolerant, kind, and loving. So you got memory, that's step 4 and 5. And you got imagination, which is life opening up and being positive instead of the small little thing we get ourselves into. And then you got intention, which is the will. So the idea is that I'm using my memory of what worked and what didn't work, and my imagination of a whole new reaction to my life. And I set an intention, and prayer is one of the ways we set an intention. We not only ask for guidance, but we're asking for power to carry out the intention, and so on. Okay, so and I just want to put at the bottom one of the things that I dearly love about Bill Wilson and the book Alcoholics Anonymous and our whole system is we are not intellectually elite people. We are trying to get to lives driven by our hearts, not by our heads. And so there is no moralistic right or wrong. the only test of truth is, does it work? Is this working for you? You know, the whole line is, first of all, we have to quit playing God. Why? Because it doesn't work. It's not working. The whole thing starts with the admission that my life, run on my self-will, under my own guidance, hasn't worked out. It hasn't brought me what I really want. And that's why bottoming out is so crucial to success in this. And the admission, my life run on my self-will has not worked. You know, what's the line? The alcoholic is an extreme example of self-will run riot and doesn't think so. You know, we think we're doing good, but then it's other people's fault that we failed. We don't think so. That's pretty far away from an admission that life hasn't worked. So now I'm getting all, just making the point that and why it's important for me to understand that serenity is not actually the goal. I mean, it is. I just don't want restless, irritable, and discontent. But the truth is that serenity is telling me how effectively I am pausing and asking and listening and doing. When I do those things, I get to experience serenity, not as an accomplishment, but as a way of life. So the point I'm trying to make, though, is the only test is not moralistic rights and wrongs. It's, how does this make you feel? Why I would get so annoyed with my sponsor, I would whine and complain about whatever. Well, how's that working for you? He would say. And then he would say, well, what are you going to do about it? That was the next annoying question. And now he says, where do you see evidence of God's love for you in your life right here, right now? A wordy way of saying, why don't you make a gratitude list? All right, so I want to do this other thing today. So we're going to come back to my creator. We'll do that next week, but I just did want to let you know what it comes from. So this has been do you see how thick this is? This has been a real, oops, I'm trying to get it so you can read it. This has been a real blessing for me, and I've not been able to ever get to the people that did it. I tried, but they're very secretive. They wouldn't, as soon as I talked about, can I come visit you? It's like almost like hanging up the phone. And but there's this outfit called the Anonymous Press, and they take their anonymity seriously. And they do this little big book that some of you have seen. It doesn't have the stories in it except for Dr. Bob's, but it's got the original manuscript, and they did this. Well, this thing, you can pick any word other than the or you know, a small word. Pick any word, and like I was picking creator, you know, so you look up in creator in here, and then it's going to show you every sentence. It gives you the whole sentence, every sentence in the first 164 pages that uses the word creator. So that's what these are. I went looking for creator, maker, and put them down. And when we do these big book workshops, we'd get everybody reading them. We'd read them around the room. You know, everybody would read one and then pass it on to the next person. And so we're going to come back to this next week. All right, then if you turn, so this is what, with the rest of the time, I'm going to go on until another 10, 15 minutes. I'm looking at the beatitudes. So Step 7, pages 4 and 5. Oh, 6 and 7. Yeah, it's a lot to do. So this is, I'm reading from this thing. Let's see, step 7, 10 pages, page 4, the Beatitudes. Summary. This is my interpretation of Emmett Fox's interpretation of 2 different language translations of Matthew's recollection of whatever Jesus actually said as part of his Sermon on the Mount. So I'm trying to say that just because it is, and I'm really been learning this with St. Ignatius and with Cloud of Unknowing, because they are both translated from the original language. And when you read different translations, you realize how differently stuff comes through. And why one of the things my sponsor encouraged me to do was one was writing prayers, writing a personal prayer. But the other was to take any passage from the big book, and that's what essentially I've done on these readings that we do at the beginning, and to put it in words that meant something to me. And I think last week we were talking about St. Ignatius, and one of the very first things he says is that we're trying to overcome ourselves so that we can make decisions not based on, and he does something, inordinate attachment, I think is one of the translations. But the one that really worked for me is disordered affections, because I like that it's disordered, it's in the wrong priority, and it's not working for you. And affections is a much more positive word for me than attachment. Affections it's got a good feel to it. Affections are a wonderful thing. It's just they're not wonderful if they're not working. And you could say a character defect is a disordered affection. It's something that we've gone to for power that's not actually working for us in one way or another. So at any rate, so this is all interpretation and translation. Who knows what he said? But he lays out these 8 Beatitudes that are briefly summarized here, and they're done in this order. And then later, next pages, they're going to be in a different order, because I like to memorize. When things aren't going well, I've gained a lot by memorizing the 3rd step prayer and the 7th step prayer, and I can say them together. And I don't know, I benefit from being able to memorize something and being able to push a button and have it come out. And then if I can add feeling to it, so much the better. So to try to remember these Beatitudes, I've had to turn them around and put them in alphabetic order. Then I need to remember that and it's always interesting what you can't remember. You're trying to remember the Beatitudes, and it always makes me laugh when I find out I couldn't remember peacemaker. But there's 1 H, and then there are 3 M's, and then there are 4 P's. So it's hunger and thirst is the H. Mourn, meek, and merciful are the M's. And then poor, pure, persecuted, and peacemakers are the P's. And each one of these things, they're all saying the same thing, kind of, but then when you read Emmet on these things, he just makes it, at least for me, makes it delicious. So the first one is poor in spirit, and it doesn't mean poor in material things. It means poor in spirit, which means having emptied oneself of all desire to exercise personal self-will. Wow. This would be the reverse of an extreme example of self-will run riot. That we've emptied ourselves of all desire to exercise personal self-will. And if we do that, the kingdom of heaven is going to mean that we are aware of God's presence, which is another word for serenity. And when I feel God's presence, how could I not be serene? Because I know that on a spiritual level anyway, I don't have to worry about the physical stuff. You know, a reminder that Ignatius says, it doesn't matter whether you have a long life, a short life, a healthy life, a sick life, a rich life, a poor life. It doesn't matter. You know, when we're going through a spiritual change, that stuff just doesn't matter. So number 2, blessed are they that mourn, which means we experience grief, failure, and suffering. You'll remember when we were talking about Bill Wilson's depression, his conclusion was, in the end, we progress spiritually, not because of pleasure, but because of pain. That's what makes us grow. And this is the same thing. People that experience grief, failure, suffering, and an inclusive term for that is desolation. You know, they talk about desolation and consolation in the old religious literature. And desolation is when I feel separated from God, and consolation is when I feel God. At least it's true for me, for absolute sure. So blessed are those that can experience grief, failure, and suffering, because they're gonna be comforted. They're gonna experience consolation. They're gonna experience God's comforting presence. Number 3, blessed are the meek. Well, he says this doesn't mean groveling, you know, whatever it is. It means open-mindedness, willingness to let go and let God. Meek is Moses. Moses is this huge biblical figure, supposedly lived over 100 back in days when people didn't do that. And they would say meek is Moses, which meant open-minded, you know, not full of self-will. Because they're going to inherit the earth. And that's beautiful, because it's saying they're going to experience life on life's terms. They're going to have their head in the clouds in serenity and their feet on the ground in the calamity, and be okay. Number 4, hunger and thirst. It's saying that you gotta want this thing. You gotta want a relationship with God. And yet the challenge is, so many of us, that's not what we want. We don't come in here wanting a relationship with God. At least I didn't. In fact, I probably didn't want a relationship with God because I don't like anybody telling me what I'm supposed to do. Even God itself, I don't want telling me what I'm supposed to do. Even though I find when I do that, life is incalculably better. Okay, hunger and thirst, for they shall be filled, they shall be satisfied. Number 5, blessed are the merciful. Blessed are those that can feel compassion toward others. And for they will experience mercy. This is an amazing thing for me. I've always been hugely self-critical. I mean, I'm critical of you, but that's nothing compared to critical of me. And it's my deepest fear and my deepest pain, is feeling my mind turn on me and declare, you are useless and stupid and you should have known better. That's the way it usually comes through. especially in the "you should have known better" is the twisting of the knife. You know, you're useless and stupid. That's the knife going in. But then you should have known better, dummy, or whatever, you know. And I want to think I'm smart. So it's so I've told you over and over again how 2019 and 2020 were the worst, most painful years of my life. And I was going everywhere. No stone unturned is my middle name when I'm on to something. And I remember going to see a counselor, and immediately she started talking about self-forgiveness and self-compassion. And it's like I would go, oh, it's like, oh no, I don't want to, you know, I couldn't even talk about that stuff. And it was like, no, that's like self-esteem. I don't want that. That's not going to get me anywhere. And so I'm just starting to get glimmers of self-compassion, which is, and it comes just to the degree that I can feel it toward you. You know, I've never been accused of being empathetic at all. It's more like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you do this right? And in working with others and seeing the negative effect of inner critical self-judgment, I'm becoming much more compassionate toward others. And guess what? I'm getting more compassionate toward me. And it feels good. I mean, it's not like, you know, building up, you know, like, ain't I something? Ain't I the coolest person in this? Not that stuff. It's more like, I'm okay. I just was misguided. I've just been misguiding myself all my life with this thing. I've let this thing run my life instead of this thing. Okay, where are we? Merciful, compassionate toward others, mercy. When you treat your neighbor as yourself, you will experience self-compassion. So just one thing. So Jesus, you know, when they're quizzing him about the most important of the commandments, he doesn't say any one of the 10 commandments. That was Jewish rabbinical law. And he says, you got to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, you know, that's the way we receive it. But I like to think that what he's saying is, first of all, you've got to love God all you can. And the way you do that is by loving your neighbor as you experience God's love for you. This is the real pass it on, that I experience God's love for me and I can pass it on to you. And that the way I love God is by loving you. Not like they're two different things. And the way I express that love is through action, through, I had one there and it just dashed away. Through gratitude, you know, by being great, by appreciating another person or another person's creative endeavor or whatever. Okay, what I really wanted to do, and we'll do it next week. Let's see, pure in heart, number 6, pure in heart, recognize God alone as the only real power cause, for they shall see God, they will see the truth, they will apprehend reality as it really is. And that's the ultimate goal. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they express the true peace of their souls. They are the children of God. They recognize God as their creator, which is the whole point of reading all these. It's addressing the question, do I experience myself as a created being, or do I think I made myself? And it's a great question. And Joe Hawk is the best I heard on this. He says, if you're struggling with the question of whether or not you created yourself, ask yourself this: if I really had a hand in my own creation, couldn't I have done a better job? And then it's like, yeah, I'm not quite the way I want to be. I wish I could have been better here or there. And finally, number 8, the last one. So we'll go back into this next week. The last one is persecuted, but it's going to take some reading in Sermon on the Mount. Leads to real persecuted, this is the pain that will lead to spiritual growth, and the kingdom of heaven again is oneness with God. So just before we stop, I don't know how many of you are Emmet Fox addicts. I'm a Emmet Fox addict, and this is his book. This is his book, Sermon on the Mount, and Dr. Bob used to use this book before they had the big book. When people would come in, they'd give them this book, and it's a spiritual manual in its own way, and it's based on Matthew's rendition. The translations of Matthew's rendition is the about the Sermon on the Mount. Okay. Lecture to be endured is going to end here momentarily, and Buck's going to shut off the recording, and then we'll have open discussion, and leave as you need to leave. As always, I deeply appreciate your presence. I do have to do a lot of stuff to do this. It's not always easy, but I am so glad to be trying to do this thing, and I would not be doing it without your presence. So thank you all very much. Here goes the gong, and then Buck will stop the recording. Thank you. I love you. Bye for now.